The early 2000s had a plethora of busts in the sport, but one of the most forgotten in recent history is none other than Sean Caisse. Many who were watching the lower divisions back in those days really thought Sean Caisse was gonna be a stud. He was a driver with a ton of raw talent, but just needed the proper guidance to further his career. 2002 to 2005 was Sean Caisse's initial years in racing, where he would rise through the ranks through karting, late models, then eventually modifieds. He was able to catch the eye of a few car owners in the then called NASCAR Busts E-Series, which is the Arca Menards E-Series today. His rookie season was in 2005, but his breakout year took place in 2006. Teaming up with former Busch Series underdog Andy Santerre saw him score 3 wins and finish second in the standings, which also caught the eye of Busch Series car owner Kevin Harvick. Sean Caisse would make his NASCAR Busch Series debut for the future Hall of Famer in 2006 at Dover, but it was one of the worst weekends ever. First, he crashes the car completely in qualifying, then once the race gets going, he's immediately in the wall entering turn 2, and by the time lap 10 rolls around, they just pull the car into the garage and he DNFs entirely. So the first big opportunity Sean gets, he does not execute, but it's not all gloom and doom. A year later, he would come back to the same track he would do terrible on and absolutely conquer it. His second season driving for Andy Santerre in the NASCAR Busch C-Series saw identical stats, only this time he would score 4 wins instead of the previous season's 3. Only this time the caliber of competition was a tad bit different, as he would have to take on a future Cup Series champion in Joey Logano to try and win that season's Busch Series title. The final race of the season saw Sean pull the old bump and run on the then 17-year-old, and the rest is history.
See Logano a little bit loose off the corner.
White flag is out.
Clear.
Final lap. Final lap for Sean Caisse and Joey Logano. Those two have been the fastest all day.
Nice and smooth, man. You got a nice little gap there. Come on home. Get home, big boy. You got it. You won it. Good job.
How about Sean Caisse?
Wow, what a finish.
Yeah, that pass, though, was something to watch. And Logano's having a burnout himself. Why not? You know what, and I think it's really safe to say that while there's been so much talk about Joey Logano, he's a can't miss, and we're going to see him in the highest form of this sport. Sean Caisse, in all probability, will move on from the Busch Series this year, and we certainly wish him luck in his racing future, but I really think you're going to be hearing a lot about him going forward, too.
Well, I think you will. He's a very mature young race car driver. He's got a lot of skill, a lot of talent. Has learned a lot in this series, and that's what's so important. And also Joey Logano, can't say enough about that youngster also.
As you're about to see, these two careers are about to take totally different paths. While the Joey Logano predictions would age like fine wine, the Sean Caisse predictions we just heard are about to age like milk in 120-degree heat. Sean Caisse did graduate from the NASCAR Busch E-Series and eventually signed a one-off deal to drive for Germain Racing at Martinsville in the NASCAR Truck Series. This is his second one-off race deal with a marquee team in one of NASCAR's top 3 divisions.
Yeah, there's a good, there's a spin right there. Sean Caisse up into the outside wall.
And as quickly as we talk about it, the caution comes out. It is Sean Caisse in the wall in turn 4, pit strategy. And right now we see here comes the 33 as you see a look at the 9 getting turned around.
2 one-off race deals for 2 marquee teams in 3 seasons, and he happens to blow them both. He couldn't even make it a full 100 laps in both of these rides, but again, it's not all gloom and doom. He also attempted 5 ARCA races that season, which caught the eye of owner Billy Venturini. Eventually, the two came to an agreement to race in a one-off deal at Rockingham in 2009. Only this time, Sean Caisse would capitalize on that opportunity.
So if he backs off that gas, white flag, 1 mile to go here at the Rock. Can he make it? That's the big question right now. The 25 has a big lead over Patrick Sheltra in the 60. It's 7.8 seconds is the difference. And the 25 is not slowing down the backstretch. Sean Caisse looking for his first ARCA REMAX Series win, and it's going to come at the Rock today. Coming out of turn number 3, the 25 looks like it will go to victory lane again, this time with Sean Caisse behind the wheel.
Whether it was the NASCAR Busts E-Series or the ARCA Series, Sean Caisse would always come in clutch. But when it came to competing in the top 3 divisions of NASCAR, he would just always stumble in his first starts. But he would get one final opportunity to showcase his talents and top equipment when Richard Childress Racing signed Caisse to drive in some select races in the NASCAR Nationwide Series in 2009.
Whoa, trouble. Big crash off turn 4.
Right behind you, yellow
4 or 5 cars involved out of turn 4.
Over there. There's going to be debris everywhere.
That was huge. Sean Caisse involved. The 99 of Trevor Bayne, the 27 of Keller.
See right here, Stenhouse gets loose off turn 4 and then stacks them up. See Keller nowhere to go. All these cars just victims of this.
When Sean Caisse really gets a piece.
Also involved Trevor Bayne. There's Caisse's car. He is back on the racetrack, but considerably beaten up.
You see the number 2 there, Sean Caisse. He is going down for a lap. The youngster has done very well for himself as he is now 2 laps down in 23rd position. Finished second in the 07 Camping World East points, and he had 4 wins. And he's given this car a good ride today. Take a look at that. He has been the biggest mover.
Yeah, not a bad run for him today. I know he'd love to be on the lead lap racing these guys for positions, but it's all about getting experience, and he's getting some good experience today. And the car's clean, no dents.
Evidently, finishes of 29th and 22nd just wouldn't cut it for RCR. Those 2 nationwide starts in 2009 would be the final starts Sean Caisse would ever have for a marquee team in NASCAR. He spent the 2010 season making 5 nationwide series starts for RAB Racing and Go Green Racing, where he was only able to finish inside the top 20 once. The sole highlight from that season came at Gateway, where Caisse was able to put the 39 car 5th on the grid. But it was very short-lived, as from the drop of the green, the car was clearly inadequate to run up front, number 1, and number 2, Sean Caisse would get involved in the big one that day. In his final attempt at Homestead later that season, he might have been feeling himself, because his final NASCAR moment would be this in qualifying. Sean Caisse would never race in the top 3 divisions of NASCAR ever again, and his final NASCAR appearance as a whole took place in the 2012 NASCAR Hall of Fame 150 in the then called K&N East Series in 2012. He would race with some marquee names you see in the Cup Series today, but as a whole, Sean Caisse's NASCAR career looked to be officially over. But that's not the end of his story, and unfortunately, this bus video is about to take a very dark turn, so get ready. Sean Caisse's personal and professional life were rapidly deteriorating from 2010 to 2012. The first to give way was his marriage after 17 months and 2 days. Then out of nowhere, before the divorce was finalized, his father would pass away in February of 2012. In the divorce documents, his ex-wife claimed that he was abusing painkillers and ultimately relinquished custody of his daughter, and his ex-wife would marry a much more successful NASCAR driver in Brian Scott. Fast forward a couple years later, and Sean Caisse would rekindle a relationship with a former mentor. Andy Cusack was the owner of Beach Ridge Motor Speedway, which is where Sean Caisse would get his start. The two would rekindle a relationship around 2013, but as you're about to find out, it got dark very fast. How dark, you ask? Well, so dark that in 2013, Sean Caisse would make a sexual assault complaint against Andy. During the following 13 months, Caisse threatened Cusack to file more sexual assault charges. In late 2014, the two would finally meet in person. Cusack offered Caisse a petition to sign that stated the sexual assault charges were false. Caisse did not sign the petition and left the meeting for time to think about the statement. He had plenty of time to think about what his next move would be, but ultimately it would be the worst decision possible. The next night, Sean lied to Andy, saying a couple of people roughed him up and that he was outside of his house at 4 in the morning. Well, he was outside of his house, only this time he was lying about his intentions. He actually beat Andy to a pulp, had his German Shepherd bite him on the calf, dragged him back into the house, continued to beat him, ended up tying him up with duct tape, he immediately stole cash from Andy's safe, as well as making him sign a check for $7,500, and even went as far as breaking one of his fingers just to get what he wanted. This was all with the help of an accomplice, his then girlfriend. And what's crazy is, even after all of this transpired, he still asked Andy for a hug and a handshake, then eventually went on his way. Sean Caisse was eventually caught and charged with the assault of Andy Cusack, but ultimately worked out a plea deal, and from what I was able to gather, he did his time and is now a free man today. It's crazy to think now that Sean Caisse was being compared with Joey Logano as a potential Cup Series hopeful. In the end, Sean Caisse will be known as a guy who had a ton of raw ability early in his career, but when given the opportunities in the top 3 divisions of NASCAR, he could just not capitalize. And all of the chaos that would transpire in the years after he was done with racing make him one of the most forgotten NASCAR busts in history. And once again, that'll do it for another video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Black Flags Matter. Catch you next time.